Good evening, and welcome to the June meeting of the Tupelo Planning Committee. Please take a moment to silence your cell phones. And at this time, please rise for the invocation given by Bill Smith and the Pledge of Allegiance led by Patty Thompson.
May we bow our heads, please. Most kind and Heavenly Father, we thank you for another sunny day. Even though we see the clouds outside, we know beyond that the sun is always shining. We'd like for you to give us the strength and the understanding and the knowledge that we may do your will tonight at this session, and that we all leave here on the same accord. Amen.
Attention. Salute. Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. The Planning Committee is a volunteer group appointed by the mayor and approved by the city council. We receive no compensation for this, and we do it as a community service. This committee spends a lot of time in our own funds studying and researching the applications and visiting the sites that are on our agenda each month. We ask that you remember that we do not take our positions on any application lightly. Our decisions are based on facts as they are presented and with regard to the regulations set forth in the city code. The Planning Committee may impose conditions on approval of a request as it deems necessary to mitigate potential hazards or problems, or to bring the nonconformity into compliance to the extent necessary to protect the rights and interests of nearby property owners and the general public. At this time, I would like to ask the staff and committee members to introduce themselves, starting with Pat.
Pat Faulkner, City Planner.
Patty Thompson.
Gus Hildenbrand.
Margaret Ann Kennedy.
Ted Mull.
Bill Smith.
Thank you. And now we'll look at last meeting's minutes, the May meeting. Is there any additions or corrections to these?
I'll make a motion that we accept the minutes as presented.
I second.
A motion's been made by Patty and seconded by Bill. Any discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion passed. Mr. Faulkner, do you have anything to report on the City Council's actions from our last meeting?
Yes, the first two items were approved by the City Council at their previous meeting. The rezoning and the text amendments will be on their agenda on June the 20th.
Okay. And we're now ready for the new business portion of the meeting. There are 4 items on the agenda tonight. 2 of them are a combination item, but there are 4 separate items. The first one that we have in order here is Flex Very 17-05. The City of Tupelo Department of Development Services has received an application for a variance from First American Bank to build a new facility at 4289 North Gloucester that is 15 feet from the front property line rather than the required 30 feet. The property is in the mixed-use commercial zoning district. And if you have someone here to speak for this, if they would come forward and speak your name, address, into the microphone, please.
Jason Van Every with Civil Link Engineering. Home address, or the office is over at the Renaissance Center for Ideas.
All right, and then offer, go ahead and state what your reasons are and the request for the variance.
Well, based on the strange shape of this lot, it's a 3-frontage lot. It has 3 streets on, that's 3 sides with a frontage to a street. And if we go by the letter of the ordinance, 30-foot setbacks leaves little to no room to develop this property. So we were wanting to get a variance to change the 30-foot setback to 15 feet on all sides so that the property could be developed. This drawing that's up there is a preliminary drawing just to show what we can fit in this property. With the 15-foot setbacks, it gives us room to put a building comfortably in the area, in the property. And the 15-foot setbacks on all sides, with the original 30-foot front, 10-foot rear and side, we're just asking for 15 feet on all sides.
For your information, this is a little strip of land that's between Highway 145 and Beach Springs Road. That's right above Walgreens area up there is what this property is. And if we went by the set variances, the building could be about 5 foot wide.
That's right.
That's the reason for the request of the variance on that.
This is the Boonville branch, and this is what the bank is proposing. Similar look to the branch. So, you know, if there was any question as to what the bank would look like, this is what we're going forward towards, something similar to that.
Okay. Anything else that you want to do?
Well, I think that's it. I mean, just basically with the way that the ordinance is worded, if we go by the letter of the ordinance, we wouldn't be able to develop the property. So that's why we're asking for the variance.
Okay. And Mr. Faulkner, have the property owners in the area been notified?
They were.
Were there any questions or responses?
We did not receive any.
Did not receive. Okay. And is there anyone in the audience then would like to come to the podium and speak for or against this? All right. Now we're getting committee. Do ones on the committee have any questions for the speaker?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask Pat if he has any misgivings or any thoughts on this.
There are some issues with access. The site being on Gloucester Street requires a permit from MDOT, and so whatever they are able to work out with MDOT to have that access permit will kind of govern that question, so we're deferring it to them.
And the MDOT permit has been submitted. It's under review.
Okay. There would only be one drive from the 145.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Just one.
So this is not premature that we need to hear this, waiting on the MDOT, really necessarily.
Concurrent review.
Will the road be entering from the north end of the property?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
As far north as we can physically put.
Okay. Okay.
Right now, there's a little gravel drive there. That's
Yes, sir.
pretty
It
close to
will
where
be. It will be in that area right there where that gravel drive is. It'll be shifted maybe. It has to be 12 feet off the property line, and that gravel drive is on the property line, so it has to be shifted down just a little bit. But that's where the entrance will be on the Gloucester side, and we'll also have another entrance on the Beach Spring side.
Mm-hmm. Well, the Beach Spring is they're not as picky as the highway department.
That's right.
Well, do we need to make that a stipulation that if we approve the variance, it has to go in hand in hand with MDOT's decision?
I don't think so.
Because if we don't and we approve it, then they could put anything on there.
That's my only concern, with any variances. Is there, this would be specific to what we're talking about now, not follow, if you decide to bail out for any reason in the world, it wouldn't follow that property.
That's correct. A variance, unless it's specifically awarded with respect to the property permanently, is applied to the specific applicant.
Now, would it become permanent with the MDOT permit? So as soon as we get the MDOT permit in hand, the variance would be a permanent transferable?
Well, once it's built, obviously it's in place. I think what the concern is, if property were to change hands before anything was built, would that second buyer automatically get the benefit of a variance? Not necessarily.
Right, that was, you know, things change. So.
That's true.
I think you talked about the strip of property. We already had another landowner up there that we had to do the same thing because of the configuration. So I'm just delighted to offer this, I think. But how do y'all feel?
Any other questions from the committee?
The drive-throughs will not come directly off of Gloucester or Beach Street.
No, if you could have the drawing back up. The drive-through is offset, it's right there in the middle, if you can see that. You'll have to drive in and then around into the drive-through. We're trying to make it where nobody cuts through it, you know.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. And that will be tempting. On
Yeah.
that configuration.
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
All right.
Well, okay.
Pat, does the department have a perspective on this application then?
Yes, we do. We looked at the required findings for granting a variance. This is a pretty clear case that the property's got unique characteristics such that it cannot be feasibly developed under the requirements of the code, and that these special conditions were not created by the applicant.
Thank you.
You don't make me.
Here's some action.
I'll make a motion that we approve the variance.
I second.
The motion's been made by Patty Thompson, seconded by Bill Smith, that we approve the variance. Now, did you want to put in there that stipulation?
With the stipulation that it goes hand in hand with MDOT.
All right. So that's been added in there. So the motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, the city council, of course, this will be a recommendation to the city council. City council will make the final decision on
Yes, sir.
this. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Now, ready for our second item of new business, which is Flex Ver 17-06.
Gus?
Mr. Hildebrand, Marilyn's requesting you speak into the mic a little closer.
I can't move around if I have the mic in my mouth. So, okay, thank you, Marilyn. I know I've been looking back there. Yeah, she says I don't speak into the mic because I move my head around. But anyway, this is variance 1706, and the City of Tupelo Department of Development Services has received an application for a variance from Janice and Eddie Lominick to cover 43% of their yard with paving. The Tupelo Development Code allows paving to be only 25% of the front yard. The home is in the low-density residential zoning district. Have someone come to speak for this variance, please?
Dan King with McCarty King Construction, in my office at 431 West Main Street here in Tupelo.
And you state the variance and the reasons for the variance, if you would, Mr. King?
Yes, the Luminecks have chosen to do a significant addition and renovation to their house, and on the west side that will create a three-car garage and some added living space, as well as a big sunroom on the back, which is creating a new drive on the west side to get to this new garage area. And their existing property, I think, was built when the house wasn't in city limits, so their existing driveway and paving is actually 35% now. So we're asking for a variance to increase that, to get to that back garage to 43%, to allow access to the new garages. Which exceeds the 25% of the city code not currently.
A lot of us in the big chunk in the front yard and, of course, the drive, too, so, yeah. Mr. Faulkner, have the property owners in the area been notified?
They were.
Were there responses?
We got a response in the form of a recommendation or a review from the Ridgeway Homeowners Association, and they basically approved the proposal.
All right, thank you. We'll open it up now to anyone in the crowd that might want to speak for or against this. Is there anyone here that wants to speak for or against this variance? Guess not. Okay. Now it's time for committee members to have questions for Mr. King. Any questions?
No, can't think of anything here.
Well, it's pretty well cut and dried with what you have there in the drawing on it, and it, since the homeowners association at Ridgeway has said that they approve this, so there's not many neighbors that would have any problems with it, I don't think, so. All right. Do I hear some action?
Does the city have anything to offer on that?
Oh, I'm sorry, Pat, yeah.
The limit on paving in the front yard is designed to avoid situations where people want to park multiple vehicles out in front of their home, and it's a visual thing. And in this case, the applicant was proposing to provide some additional landscaping in the area that is still unpaved in the front yard that will kind of hide the concrete. And then also because they're adding garage space toward the rear of the property, you're not going to see all the vehicles parked out in front. It's just access primarily. So we're recommended approval.
Thank you, Pat.
I do have one question, Mr. Chairman. In my packet, there was something about their roof from the homeowners association. Was that relevant to this at all? Or just letting us know that they had approved it? That's all.
Well, as far as I know, that has nothing to do with this code
Okay.
variance that we have on this. It was,
You're
I
just-
think they were just they stating that they also approved the fact that with this type of house that the metal roof would be okay with the neighborhood association. Is that right, Pat?
Yes.
Well, with that, then, if you're asking for a vote, I'll make the motion that we accept this application.
I second that.
Well, it looks like Patty Thompson and Bill Smith are doing the motions and the seconds tonight. Is there any discussion from the committee on this before we vote?
It's pretty cut and dried, like you said.
All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion approved. Thank you, Mr. King.
Thank you, folks.
And the city council will make the final decision on this. This will be a recommendation to them.
Thanks again.
Thank you. Now, the next item on the new business is Flex 17-02, and the Department of Development Services has received a request for a flexibility zoning review from OB Land LLC to locate a life care community vacant land west of North Gloucester and north of Dunbarton Oaks subdivision. This land is zoned mixed-use residential, MUR. The Tupelo Development Code requires a flexible use review to locate a life care community in the MUR district. I presume that you're here at the mic to speak on this. If you'd state your name and address and reason for your variance and or request for this.
Okay, so my name is Bruce Patel, 3189 McCullough Boulevard, Belden, Tupelo. So my company's name is Fusion Hospitality. And the reason we're having to rezone this is because the land right now is zoned mixed-use residential, and the code requires a flexible use to locate a life care community center in the MUR district. This is Dell Livingston. He's the architect on record. So.
Yeah, Dell Livingston, LLW Architects, 803 Mount Moriah, Memphis, 38117.
Thank you, sir. All right. Mr. Faulkner, have the property owners in the area been notified?
They have.
Were there responses or questions?
Yes, we've had several questions and comments, so just mainly wanting to understand the scope of the project and the basis for the review. Could I kind of clarify the process and what we're doing here, the fact that there's two applications that will be related to this one project? Our development code, in each zoning district, there are some uses that are allowed by right. They don't have to get permission. Some uses are reviewable at a staff level. Others are reviewed by the planning committee and city council. These are a little more serious, and this falls into that category. And then, of course, there are uses that are not allowed. So it is a use that is allowed, but with a certain level of review. Following the review and decision on whether to allow this use in this location, there is a major site plan review. And that is a term for a large-scale development that includes multiple different kinds of uses within it. It could either be multi-tenant commercial buildings or multi-family residential, or in this case, a mixed-use development involving the life care community along with some retail. So with that site plan review, we're recognizing that there are multiple elements to this that will be developed in greater detail later. One part of it will actually have to come back to the city council for approval. That's the residential subdivision part. Other elements of it will be reviewed as they're presented for construction through our regular review process. That process will be where the majority of the details are presented and reviewed and approved. For example, how many parking spaces and how wide the streets and what type of landscaping. Right now, what you've got is a conceptual, broad scope look at the project. And we're going to let the applicants describe that project, but then we'll entertain any questions and comment from the public and the committee.
Did you want that done now, or are you talking about when we get into? Right now, I thought we were just going to handle the whether we were approving to locate a life care community. Do you want to do both of them at once then, Pat, do you think?
Well, I don't think we can evaluate the decision on whether to allow the use without understanding the project, what the site's going to be, how it's going to be used, and how it'll function.
All right, the other application then is MSP 17-01, and this is the Department of Development Services has received an application for a major site plan review of a proposed mixed-use development that includes a life care community and out parcels for other commercial uses from OB Land LLC. The property is located west of North Gloucester and north of Dunmartin Oaks subdivision. The property is zoned mixed-use residential and mixed-use commercial. And it's on, the mixed-use commercial is actually on the highway there, 145 is, or I mean 145, or Gloucester Street, and the residential is behind that, the strip behind that. So that's the reason for the two different zonings there. The major part of it is going to be on the residential part of it there. Now, you want to put in some more comments on that, if you would, Mr. Patel?
No? Right.
Yeah. Well, what we have right now is the majority of the residential area is in the mixed-use residential zone. There's a portion that we've created. I mean, and we want to create a nice, inviting atmosphere. We've created this boulevard effect. I met with the DOT, and we determined that they're going to allow one curb cut off Gloucester, and that's the best point that they recommended was the midpoint of the frontage. We provided the majority of, again, 2 out parcels here that have frontage, but they still require, after meeting with the city engineer, we'll have only one curb cut, which will be off the boulevard. The out parcel here will have access in front of some one-story retail area, and then the majority of all the residential area, the assisted living and memory care facilities, a 2-story proposed development, and then the single-story senior housing or senior living areas will be duplex-type facilities that are 1-story. We also incorporated a lot of green space with, we have all 24-foot drives for all the parking. We have bike lanes, of course, all sidewalks, and buffers will be, right now we've just generically indicated buffers, but we'll obviously have to meet all the city's requirements for the proper buffering.
So if we want to know more about the senior living facility, or like, do you want to know something specifically, or just?
You think we need to know more? Pat, do we need to know more on that?
I would say whatever information you'd like to share at this point would be helpful.
I believe Ms. Vale may have some concept or conceptual images, maybe, if she could put that up on there. No? Okay, all right. Well, I had sent some conceptual images of what the facility looks like inside. So what you're looking at on the top left of the screen, that's the assisted living and memory care. So what that consists of would be roughly 2/3. It would be about 100 units is what we're looking at. It's 2 stories, of which 2/3, meaning around 65 units, would be what's known as assisted living. And about 35 of the units out of the 100 would be for memory care. So we offer bathing services. I have a full list right here. Actually, I emailed it. I was hoping it was on the screen, but I'll pull it up.
Well, I think that would be what's common with that type of facility is
Yes,
what
sir.
you're talking about there, yes.
So the level of facility that we're shooting for would be higher scale one than that's existing in our North Mississippi area. It's a higher end facility, to the likes of something you'd see in a much larger city. So the idea here is to add to the quality of life for senior citizens, which frankly it's not here right now. So
Now, are the duplexes going to be owner-owned, or are they going to be rental or lease, or what?
So the duplexes are what we would call independent living. So they have they're roughly 1,500 square feet each, 1 floor. So those we're not looking to sell anything off. We'll own it, we'll control it, and then it's a community is what we're creating here. Right, so as our seniors age, if they so choose, they're able to move on to the assisted living, and then from there, if the need is there for them to go to memory care, they're able to do that. So there's connectivity amongst the aging process. That's what the purpose of creating the assisted living, the independent, and the memory care, all on one campus. So.
And as a point of information, this property backs up to Legion Lake, is what?
That's correct.
Yes, sir.
Yes, on there. So it's from, actually, North Gloucester Street to Legion Lake is in between that.
Right, so it goes back about 1,000 feet off of Gloucester West, and as you can see,
And it doesn't go all the way to the lake. There is a large buffer between that property line that's closest to the lake and the actual lake that's owned by the Legions.
Okay. So the Legion Lake owns a strip of land behind this, is
Yes,
what you're saying?
that's correct, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Do you all know about the width of the buffer back on the lake?
You mean what the
Well-
Legion owns, or?
What the Legion owns, or do we have, I just
we
couldn't tell.
I'd say between 60 to 100 feet,
Okay.
somewhere, because it kind of varies throughout.
Yeah,
It's not
yeah.
really parallel, but between 60 to 100.
Okay. Do you have anything more to add then to that, or?
Not particularly, unless anyone has a particular
Yeah,
question.
well, we'll have questions. Pat, have the property owners in the area been notified?
Yes.
And there have been responses, I see. Yes. All right. Thank you. And you can sit down there and we'll,
Oh, I had a couple of more questions.
well, we'll have
Oh,
some
later.
questions from
Okay.
us, yeah.
Okay.
But right now, we're going to open it up to the public portion of the hearing on this, and anyone that wants to come speak for or against this can come to the microphone, and you can take a maximum of 5 minutes, and you can state your name and address and come forward now.
Mike Pettigrew. I'm the commander of the American Legion. Address is 1875 Legion Lake Road, Tupelo, 38804. We have two concerns that we hope will be addressed during this actual process. While they're distinct, they're both distinct, but they're both related to the actual lake. As you know, this is not just an asset for the American Legion. It's an asset for the neighborhood. It's also an asset for the community. You know, well over 200 people outside of the Legion that don't belong to the Legion fishing there every year. The Boy Scouts, Cub Scouts use the lake and the surrounding area for Eagle Scout projects, for campouts, for merit badges. Also, we use it for senior projects from Tupelo High School. We mentored for this past year, also for service hours from TCPS. So we see ourselves as the caretaker of the lake, not just the proprietor of the lake. So that's the position that we're actually coming from. Additionally, the lake, as you know, is part of the Town Creek Water Management Association. It's part of the watershed and its flood control. And that comes to our first issue, is the actual flooding. As you can look at the lake, probably about 90%, and that's an estimate, of the flow of the water into the lake comes from natural or from what was previously zoned as farmland. About 10% of the flow comes from residential. The lake, the level of the lake, the spillway, and the dam were designed and structured with that flow in mind. We feel that, at least how it's presented so far, that the construction of this facility may significantly impact the flow of water into the lake. So especially in that area up to the north where, actually there is a small portion where his property does touch the lake, that he actually has a small inlet. So there's a large flow. So you're taking away, there's a wetlands back in his area or an old pond or an old lake. You're taking away the soil, the vegetation, and all the trees, and you're replacing it with concrete, with pavement, with rooftops. And so the magnitude and the volume of that flow of water into the lake could significantly override the capacity of the dam and the spillway, having negative impact on the lake itself as well as the neighborhoods to the south of the lake. So we would request that some kind of flood control management assessment be done to determine if that channelized flow is going to have a negative impact on the lake. That's the first issue. Second issue is environmental. First is the construction part. So once you slick that all off to do the building, there's a sediment flow, a significant sediment flow with the water and the sediment going into the lake. Again, it has potential to damage the spillway and affect the lake, but also has an environmental impact. And so that's also the second part is post-construction. We have, right now, most all the water that goes in the lake is organic. So now we're changing from a runoff of organic runoff to commercial/industrial runoff. Every oil spill, every transmission leak, everything in the area where the water flows toward the lake, cigarette butts, all the areas around the dumpsters are now going to be washing to the lake and environmentally impacting the stability of that environment. So we have a very significant concern that runoff, which has problems in other areas, will damage the actual lake and its viability. So as part of that, we request a environmental impact study to determine if this development will actually impact the stability of the lake and the environment. Thank you.
Pat, do you know for sure whether most of this flow should flow towards Gloucester, though, right?
It does not.
It does not?
The stormwater management plan, that's the preliminary plan, shows that there's a break somewhere there in the middle, and part of it would flow toward Gloucester, and part of it would flow back toward the lake, because that's the way the land lies. What normally happens with a development project of any scale is that they are required to demonstrate that they will not have any adverse effects of stormwater from the site. In other words, they're required to control the water in such a manner that no more leaves the site post-development than is leaving it now. And they'd also be controlled in terms of how much at a time it comes off, that you're not concentrating the runoff, which used to be dispersed. So there's an engineering challenge for them, but that's part of the normal process of demonstrating that they meet those stormwater management requirements.
Yes, you may, if you would, Mr.
Actually have my civil engineer here with me as well, Mr. Harvey Metheny. Maybe he can help address that concern as well, because we've already looked at all of those kind of things. So.
Good evening. My name is Harvey Metheny. I'm with the Pickering firm, 6775 Lennox Center Court, Suite 300 in Memphis, Tennessee, 38115. The comments were excellent and really spot on as to what we need to consider for the health of that lake and the quality and the capacity of that lake to assimilate our discharge. So also correct that the majority of the site does currently drain to the west. So we do have plans, and I apologize I don't have a laser pointer, but to the rear of the site, you don't see it on the plan that's on the screen, but there will be detention facilities that the drainage will, well, most likely, and we hope one detention facility that the drainage will flow into to be before it's discharged into the lake. And relative to the concern about sedimentation and siltation during construction, also a very good comment. Of course, all the state requirements for erosion control will be in place, but the possibility of using this sediment basin during construction as a silt trap is also a good location for that. So all the things that were brought up are under consideration, and we will need to work with the American Legion and know more about the capacity of this lake to make sure that we discharge appropriately into it. Be glad to answer any questions that you may have.
With our annual rainfall and the rooftops, how much water are we talking about?
We have not run the calculations. I'm not prepared to answer the question tonight, but the city's requirement for pre- and post-discharge, which I believe Mr. Faulkner already alluded to, will be required to discharge no more than the current discharge to that lake after we appropriately detain it.
Okay.
I know I kind of answered around your question, but I don't have the specific numbers in front of me.
All right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Now, more comments from the public. If you'd like to make a comment, please come forward and state your name and address, please.
Good evening. I'm Ralph Pfeiffer. I'm at 1903 Lakeshore Drive here in Tupelo. My property comes very close to backing up to your facility, or proposed facility anyways. Many of our neighbors are concerned about how much setback off of our property that you're going to have because you're now increasing the amount of traffic noise, personnel, other things greatly. You're looking at a 2-story structure very close to our backyards, all the drives for those, all your maintenance personnel. We're also concerned on what yard care, how much you're going to do for green space between our properties and yours, what type of maintenance, all of that will be taken care of. We're a little concerned about the retail facilities, since you have something going on that for people to live is one thing, but then when you start putting in retail locations, now you're having increased vandalism, increased theft, increased other things on a lot of retail locations. The retention pond, in which he brought up, was a very good point. We'd like to know about mosquito abatement. When we have a proper lake going on, we have fish and things in there that helps keep the mosquito population down in that area. But with a straight retention pond directly in our backyard, now we're looking at our quality of life being affected for being able to go outside versus people that are mostly indoor residents of your facility. Those are questions that I'd like to see brought up towards the committee, that if you would also be able to look into, please.
All right.
Thank you.
Could I ask, could you give me your last name again, please?
Pfeiffer, P-I-F-E-R.
Thank you.
It's all
My
right,
name is
it won't
Paul
bite.
Danian. I live at 797 Sunnyside Drive. They're a 2-story building backed right into my property. And of course, I'm at a higher elevation than what's graded right now in that level from Gloucester. I don't know if you're going to, excuse me, I don't know if you're going to maintain that level for your construction. If you do, then you're about 30 feet below my backyard. You're going to need some kind of a retaining wall to keep, keep that from falling back. And I don't know how far, we need dimensions, actual dimensions. I know these are conceptual drawings, but I'm 285 feet from the center of Sunnyside back towards you people. I don't know how close that comes to your property or your buildings. If we can get some dimensions so that we have a better picture of what's going on, elevation-wise, and also lateral dimensions. That way we'll know where we're at in relation to your projected construction. Sounds like a good concept you people are working with, but we're trying to protect our property also. And we want to make sure that your benefits and your gains don't tear into ours. We've worked all our lives for our properties, and we don't want to lose them. And if the planning committee can work out something with the project and get some actual dimensions for us and issue some maps somehow so that we can see where we're at physically with their construction, we'd appreciate that.
Is that
Thank you.
information available, Pat, exactly, or are the dimensions he's looking for available now, or is that something?
I don't have them.
We could probably develop, just take an aerial map and give some approximate, superimpose our site plan on that, just to give some approximate dimensions. They wouldn't be accurate at this point, but we can at least give you kind of a conceptual idea of where your property is versus the buildings. I mean, our buildings are set back quite a bit, especially the two-story element.
Oh, she wants you to come up to the microphone. I wondered what.
All right, if you don't need me anymore.
Yeah. Well, what he's asking for is some elevations there where your property heads down to his. I guess is probably that from Sunnyside Drive or that down to the back of his property is, it does go down quite a ways.
Yeah, that's correct. And we're aware of the grade changes, and that's Harvey Matheny's involved in creating those. I mean, right now, we're still at a very conceptual stage. But as far as we can give him estimated finished floor or finished grade elevations in certain areas, but we realize, and I'm maybe speaking for Harvey, we're going to have a certain amount of retaining walls. We realize that, but we can give him horizontal dimensions if that's what he was requesting, also just by superimposing our site plan on some aerial satellite images, just to get a better concept of where we are. We have a vicinity map. Obviously, that doesn't locate the individual houses or any individual property lines, but we can take that image right there, and we can take our development and actually put it in there where the building is, and then they'll have a better understanding of where it's located.
All right. Are there other comments from the, if you would like to make comments, please come forward and state your name and address.
My name is Martha Warren. My husband Charles and I reside at 818 Sunnyside Drive, Tupelo, Mississippi, 38804. In December of 2015, we purchased this property from Rudy and Sandra Dossett after having probably looked at it for about 6 months. We viewed it as a quiet haven, a pleasant area to live in the heart of North Tupelo. Now, at the time of our purchase, we did not know to inquire as to how it was zoned. We thought that we were in a protected area. We had always been in protected neighborhoods before. So when we looked out actually the way our home is situated, and you will see 818 Sunnyside on the map, the way our home is situated, we sit with our back to the lake, but then the side of our property is adjacent to Mr. Patel's. And at the time of our purchase, we assumed that this was still in the Baker estate. We thought that our North Tupelo property, along with our neighbors, would be protected. And we thought that perhaps one day this would be an upscale neighborhood, which we would value. So when we purchased the property, and then when we found out that this was to take place, which we did not get a letter, many of our residents did not get a letter. So when we learned of the present plan to build a life care community, it was a shock to us because it's right in our back door. Literally, it is in our back door. We would be the most affected by this. Now, before you think this is unduly said, I do want to propose to each of you who has a part in this to consider how you would feel and what you would say in response to this given situation. Each of the homes on Sunnyside, the north side, would be affected in a negative way. First of all, we would be bombarded with noise from the construction of this life care community and the continual noise of the daily life at such a place. Now, we know our hearts are concerned with those who have dementia, those who are hurting in such a way. But we are also, just like Mr. Paul Danian stated, we're concerned with our property as well, and we don't want what we've worked for a lifetime to go down the drain. Now, in review, Mr. Baker, he owned this property for a lot of years, and he did not sell, and I think he is now deceased, but if he were here today, I think that he would tell you this is going to be a negative impact on all of North Tupelo as a whole. Now, I not only speak for myself, I speak for all of my neighbors, my precious neighbors who are so concerned about this very thing. Yes, I understand Mr. Patel's view, but from a resident's point of view, we do not look at it favorably. We believe that we will look out our window and literally be looking into the window of a life care center, which is not part of a residential area. I thank you for your audience. Thank you for hearing what we have to say. Thank you for...
Thank you, Ms. Warren.
Mr. Hildenbrand, could I, while you said 818?
818.
Yeah, it's where...
Yeah, I'm just wanting to ask them what the distance is there.
We are probably no more than, our actual property line falls probably no more than 50 to 70 feet from the corner of our house.
Okay, but from the corner of the project's property line, can y'all, so you think it's about 50 to 70 feet from
our house to the edge of our property, and then that property begins Mr. Patel's property.
Okay.
There we go. The structure that she's talking about, their residence is right here.
Right there, yes.
And their house is very close to this property line.
Well, the property lines should be together there, right? Isn't that?
It is together.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And currently, the schematic drawing that y'all have seen that we put up is, I'm just estimating because I don't have dimensions.
She needs you in the
Yeah, we need this on in the...
We don't have actual dimensions on our conceptual plan, but just as an estimate, we have, I would say, 70 feet as a minimum from this from this tree, line of landscaping to our property line. So that's a significant amount of buffer, if in my opinion, that we have between the edge of this drive and the property line.
And do you plan to leave that little no man's land from your landscaping out to your property line in natural growth vegetation or mown away?
That's going to be, a landscape plan that we'll have developed. It'll be part of our submission. We don't have any specific plans at this point.
So then for these properties, there would not be a visual obstruction. It would be fully visible.
Well, we don't know at this point. Like I said, we don't have a landscape plan developed, but I think there'd be a good determination that this wouldn't be a big lawn that is out there without any type of trees, or it'll be a fully developed landscape plan at some point.
Okay, just curious.
We like landscaping, and all of my developments, we do spend a lot of money on landscaping, because it's important.
And I know that, and from living here, and I appreciate that compliment. Yeah.
Did you have something more to say, Ms. Warren?
We do have further questions and things to add, because, as this plan is proposed, then we have things that we would like to look at as well.
State your name and...
My name is Charles Warren. I live at 818 Sunnyside Drive, Tupelo, 38804. As my wife's already stated, our property will be directly influenced as we are situated more closely to the life care community and the two-story assisted living and memory care building proposed. There are several concerns which I believe need to be addressed. Number one, the two-story assisted living and memory care on the map, along with its parking space, would be very visible from not only our home, but all the neighbors as well on that side of Sunnyside. We would ask for a shield of present trees to be left intact, as well as a berm which would adequately planting of trees and shrubbery to insulate us from noise, level, and visibility. We had asked that all of this be 500 feet from our property line and cover the visibility in said facility. We have been informed by the Fine Drive residents that a two-story hotel was proposed there, and later they were left faced with a 5-story building. They consider that a terrible breach and are very unhappy. We don't want there to be any misunderstanding as to what is actually the outcome here and what is proposed. Number two, there is also a safety factor involved to our residents. Preparations for a fence would definitely be needed, as you will be housing some of unsound minds. They are there due to medical deficiencies, and we feel for them. But we would not want anyone wandering onto our property or perhaps into the lake, which would be a greater tragedy. Number three, we are highly concerned that the facility would change the water flow on our side of this property, and it would cause water flowing into the property as well as our neighbors. Proper drainage would also need to be addressed in detail. I think these three things need to be addressed very much as this is looked forward into. It's we're looking at this. I thank you for listening to our concern, but these are our homes. These are where we live. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Warren,
Yes.
let me ask you a question.
Yes, sir.
If that was done and they was grading that off, how much would the drop be from the corner of your property to the facility that they're looking at putting in?
Well, you have a hollow that goes across there, and that's where I'm concerned about the drainage and all, because they're going to have to build that up to build that property, to build a two-story building on there, so you'll have quite a fall. I don't know. Probably the engineer could probably tell you that. I'm sure there's going to be a big amount of water that's going to drain off on our side of the property because it's kind of a valley type going back through there.
Okay. Okay, sir.
Thank you.
Sir, you come ahead, yeah, if you want to speak. No,
Oh.
there's
There's a gentleman coming.
a gentleman coming there, Mr. Patel. Yeah.
Sorry.
I am Ed Neely. I live at 2014 Strain Street, Tupelo 38804. I have two principal concerns about. First of all, I don't think that it's necessarily a bad project. I know Mr. Patel, and he is a good businessman, and he cares about the appearance of his properties. So I'll say that to preface my remarks. I am sincerely afraid of the water problem, both on the lake side and the sunny side. Having some limited experience of 8 years in city government, I can tell you that water runs downhill with a vengeance, and the city of Tupelo has been obliged to buy property because of somebody else's water that ran down and flooded somebody's house. So I can't overemphasize the need that this committee has to be thoroughly satisfied that the water runoff will not be a problem in the future. My second concern is the aesthetics of the project. I don't think it'll be an ugly project, but I don't think that people who have got a rather sizable investment in their homes necessarily want to view it on a regular basis. It affects more than Sunnyside. It affects all the homes around the lake. It affects all of the homes in, I can't think of the street name that Mr. Hutto and other people live on. And frankly, there are some tremendous investments that people have in their property. It can be done aesthetically pleasing, and it can be engineered where water is not a problem. I would just beseech the commission to be darn sure that those two things happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Neely.
I second the motion.
Yeah. Anyone else like to comment? Come forward. Dick, you want to come on? Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Yes, George. State your name and address.
Hello, my name is Joey Hutto. I live at 1630 North Lake Drive here in Tupelo. And I echo what Mr. Neely said. You know, you're a successful businessman, and not saying it's a bad project or a good project, but a lot of times commercial development, the sales don't go in the same direction as homeowners. And homeowners, that is the biggest asset a person can have is your own home. It seems to me, I don't know if I was on the notice list or not, but I don't know anything about this. I just got it 5 times removed from 2 other people. There seems to be some schematics and a lot of unanswered questions. The water is a big deal for that Legion Lake. I live on Legion Lake. When there's a good rain on Legion Lake, my park that I've got a pretty good amount of money in goes underwater. In fact, I fly fished it in my azalea bed before when you have a pretty good rain. And the guy from the Legion, I was very impressed with what you had to say. Thank you. You do have a different kind of flow than normal rain into a lake. And it's a really nice green area. There are not a lot of green areas left. And I know the planning committee's a part of, you know, there's some homes you can't tear down. You can't cut down big trees and so forth. This is a pretty cool place in town, and a lot of people have to look at it, whether it's nice or not nice, I don't know. But before you fast track something like this, I hope you'll, I just beg you to get the facts of the deal. Once you rezone something to multifamily, all bets are off, okay? You don't have any intent to sell it now, but somebody else may sell it, and it may be a different use. And once you change it to multifamily, use. I don't know what the proper term. I know I served on the city council in 1977 to 1981, and I know we made a terrible decision to zone something multifamily, in which impacted a lot of fine homes, and I wish I'd done that differently. But, so once you do this, or if you recommend this to the city, and they do that, it's got long-lasting effects. So I'm not really opposed to it, I just don't know anything about it. And I thank you for serving on a thankless committee, because you don't make any money. I don't know if you get a company car. The planning commission that was under our board, they had company cars, and if y'all don't have one, I'm sorry, but thank you.
Yeah. I'm sure Tupelo is a lot better off than it was then, right? Yeah. Any more comments from?
Didn't intend to do this, but I feel I might.
We want everybody to make a comment, because you need to speak up now.
Two concerns. I assume that you have been permitted already. You have to go through some government approval to have a nursing home. As you already have approval for that? Okay.
We're working on 3 facilities right now in 3 different states.
Okay, all right. To emphasize the water problem, Mayor Neely and Mike brought up. I too was on the city council, and Pat, you well remember the Hibner flooding that we continually had down there. So I can't overemphasize the fact of the water flow. It's a water management, Town Creek Water Management District responsible for that watershed lake. So emphasize that point. And then American Legion went to a tremendous amount of effort to make sure that the new Legion post we built would complement the neighborhood, concerned about the aesthetics. We went to additional expense and additional planning to make sure that we were compatible, not just compatible, that we actually complemented the neighborhood. So aesthetics are very important, not only to the Legion, but to all the property owners over in North Tupelo. Those are the points that I would like to make. Thank you.
Thank you, Dick. Anyone else?
I would like to add, just as an aside, I visited the Legion building facility this week for the first time. And I was so impressed. And so I do appreciate all the work. I really didn't know about a lot of the background, but it is a fine facility. I would suggest y'all visit it if you have a chance.
I already have my 5 minutes. Can I have 2 more minutes?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Paul Danian, 797 Sunnyside. I have a solution to all these problems. West of Lowe's and north of I-22, some beautiful flatlands.
In the floodplain.
No hills, no lakes, no homes.
Are you thinking the new residential subdivision? That's awesome.
I'm trying to make it easy for you. Believe me, that's beautiful land there. You don't have any excavating to worry about. You don't have any drainage. You don't have people in your backyard hollering at you. I just wanted to throw a little humor in this. Maybe he'll take my word on it and look into it. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Joanna Megginson. I live at 2106. My husband and I do Country Club Road. We just finished a new house in December, moved in December. I grew up in this area. My mother and my family grew up across from Legion Lake. It's a very special place to me. The area, the lot that we happened to buy, my mother and daddy owned and planned to build on that lot when I was 5, which I had forgotten about. But anyway, we bought it unbeknownst to me that I could have grown up there, but grew up right down the street. Previous to this, we lived in Sharon Hills on Lynn Circle. So I have experienced firsthand the flooding situation. When commercial property, which is an asset to Tupelo, which I have dealt with Mr. Patel in the past with his hotels that were adjacent to Sharon Hills, and he is a fine businessman and has put very nice properties in this town. Because of commercial buildings that were done, this neighborhood, and because of the tornado, if you didn't go through with the tornado, you have no idea what it was like. And also, when commercial properties are built, it does change your property value. It does change Tupelo. I've just been here my whole life. The noise level, the barriers that were promised to us for Sharon Hills has nothing to do with this, but they were not done. They were not done to protect our properties. I have a piece of looking at this lake now that I looked at my whole life. I could not stand it if something happened to this lake. It is, and it's like Joanne, all of the representatives that have come up for us have said, it just makes a real difference when you start changing the area that you live in. And I just want to emphasize to the committee, and I know you will put into a lot of thought to the drainage and what is proposed here before anything is done. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Need to speak up? Yes.
Good evening. Terry Lohr, 811 Sunnyside Drive. I'm changing the subject a little bit here. What is the number of occupants that will be in each of these duplexes? And the other question I have is, what type of retail stores are you looking at putting in there? That's all I have. Thanks.
Do you want to let him come and answer that?
You want to answer that as you can, Mr. Patel? Or, yeah.
So the duplexes would have no more than 2 people in each unit. And then the little retail centers, they're not really that big. If you look on the slide that's up there, yeah, each one's 14,000 or so square feet that flank the road. So to put that in perspective, if you were to go into a Subway sandwich shop, each one could house about maybe 6 of those. So it's not really, I mean, you're not going to put TJ Maxx in there, so don't get your hopes up high. It's not going to happen. It's not that big. So does that answer your question?
Do you know what's going in there at this present time?
No, we don't. Makes it hard to, without a set of plans, to lease something out without an actual, so. Good?
Thank you. Could be an exercise center. You know, all these people are going to be 65 and older. Need lots of exercise. So, any more?
Ms. Patel, you were holding a thought a moment ago that was, I think, an answer to someone's maybe comment.
I don't know. It seems like I did have something on I think a lot of the concern was coming from like the drainage and all that, but after developing well into 8 figures of real estate in this town, I can assure you the city of Tupelo will not let you build unless you do it per code. And that includes erosion control into the lake. We've built all over the state, and it's just like any other city. If you have, throughout the construction phase, if you have erosion, you can't have erosion. You got to put up silt fences and all this fun stuff. Mr. Faulkner here can attest to that. They'll come out and shut you down in 2 seconds. So that's just standard construction procedures to put up erosion control and storm detention. Sure.
Just one quick comment about the drainage. If we could go to I believe it was the map that showed the contours that are impossible to read at this scale, but
the dark map.
It's that right there. Okay. So the property line, that is the landscape buff, the row of hedges or screening for the rear drive. The property line is actually further north. It's not shown on this, there's a draw, as the gentleman mentioned earlier, that comes right down through here into that little finger of the lake that you'll see on the aerial that just barely clips our property. I believe these properties north of us sit higher, and we will not be pushing any water from our site onto adjoining properties. So we'll continue to bring that around, but it won't go directly into the lake at this point. Again, it'll go into some type of retention facility, or I should say detention facility, before being discharged. And just to go back, several comments previously, a concern about mosquitoes. These will be dry basins typically, except when there's a storm event where they'll hold water and release it at a controlled rate, so they will not have standing water in them except during a storm event.
So thanks to technology, I believe Ms. Vale has some of the images that I had sent over. So if we want to see what the actual facility would look like, I got some inside pictures to give everyone an idea of the level of facility, the level of quality on what we're proposing to develop. If you could pull it up, Ms. Vale. Sorry to put you on the spot back there.
While we're waiting, I have a question along these lines. Someone brought up something earlier I thought was real interesting about, I think it was the American Legion, about something interesting, the quality of the water that will be run off, which will be different than the organic runoff that he mentioned. Oily water from cars and cigarettes, and certainly there'll be some construction runoff. Will these detention ponds that we have on a map that are going to be constructed, I mean, do they filter the water? Do they do anything like that to reorganic the water, or, you know, protect it from that type thing, because that's going to go right into that lake?
I know it's not going to be Fiji water when it's done, so I'm going to let him answer this one.
Okay.
Well, let me just state, this is a retirement community, and most people will not smoke, and there probably won't be that many vehicles there, but have vehicles, but they're
the memory care facility, the 35 units, they're not allowed to drive either, so.
Yeah.
And as far, there was a concern that somebody mentioned about somebody walking into a lake. So the facility, because of dementia and memory care issues, it's a control, okay. So that's the one I was that concerned. It's a controlled facility. Like, you can't just run out the facility. It's how it works. So it's all keyed access. It's kind of like a credit card, and like the staff would have it. They can't just, people just can't walk out and as they please. It's controlled. It's controlled access for them, so.
I do know they get out quite often. I'm in the insurance business.
That's on the assisted.
I went to one and the guy asked me to let him out, you know. I started letting him out before the nurses started running.
Well, that's on the assisted living side of things. I don't know if you know anyone that's 65 or so, but they're free to come and go as they please. We can't stop anybody that can, you know. But if they're in the memory care, we have to control who gets in and out, so. Just the way it works, I guess. If you want to answer the water quality.
Yeah. water quality is going to be dictated in large part by really a couple of different things. And I'm talking post-development water quality. So during construction, obviously, we have silt fencing and other measures that have to be in place to meet those requirements. Post-development, the two primary things that can affect discharge, the quality of the discharge water are trying to minimize the amount of the travel distance of the stormwater across pavement, across asphalt, parking, that kind of thing, where it can pick up sediment and oils and things that are on the pavement, right? In some communities, there are requirements to put filters even in each individual inlet. I don't believe that's a requirement in the state of Mississippi or in the city of Tupelo, as I understand it. But there are things that we can do even beyond the minimum requirement to try to minimize those flow paths that are across paved surfaces. And I would say the other big factor is the maintenance of the property and the fact that this is all going to be under one ownership. And I can't speak to Mr. Patel's how he manages his property, but this may not be, I wouldn't consider this to be a typical retail site like a big box facility or a mall where you really have very little control about what's done on the property, what's thrown on the pavement, what's the cups that are thrown down and the cigarette butts that are discarded. So the standard of care of maintenance of the facility, mowing and cleanliness and litter control is a big factor in what washes off, because everybody that's spoken tonight about stormwater, it's going to flow downhill and it's going to pick up things along the way. So maintenance of the site is key to that.
I think I'm starting more to grasp that now, because like you said, with the big box stores and the seas of asphalt that we have in our town and that every town has and that we hate to look at. You don't ever do that.
You did ask one other specific question that I didn't answer.
Oh, okay.
Would the detention facility help to filter some of those, some of that litter and debris? And yes, it will, to some degree.
Okay. Okay. Well, the difference is this is going to run off in a lake. So I'm kind of waking up to it's different. You all control the Walmart or the Sam's or the Lowe's into those detention ponds, like is behind Oscar's liquor store and Mist and the Neon Pig. And is that similar to what is going to be for this development? But the thing with this development is that it's going on into a somewhat pristine lake since the Corps of Engineers who redid the lake. It's much more pristine now that they've done all that. So I guess my question is, do we have other places? Does it make any environmental difference that we need to study since this is going to run off into a lake rather than a place a catch basin that the city has designed for other places that don't run off into a lake?
Well, it is a little different situation, but all of the water that runs off eventually goes into the natural lakes and streams.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, we'll look at that.
So we don't have the filter requirements that he was talking about. The state doesn't, so I'm sure we wouldn't if the state doesn't, right?
Right. The state and the federal government have the jurisdiction over water quality per se.
Okay.
But we will, but we do, I think there are some things that we could look at there.
Okay.
One other thing I'd like to add, if I may, and I spent about 13 years of my life in municipal government as a city engineer and director of development. And unfortunately, from firsthand experience, I know that detention ponds are often out of sight, out of mind. And maintenance of detention facilities, in many cases, is lacking. You grow up in weeds or whatever. That would be that'd be very hard to consider on this site, considering where we're going to locate it. It's going to be located right on the property that they're trying to keep looking nice for their own residents.
Sure.
So it's not going to be in a location where it can be out of sight, out of mind. Because of where it's located and because of the care that they want to have for the overall
So
property.
I mean, I would assume it would have to be on the, what I call the back end of the property, which would be the lake end, right?
It would be on the lake end, but again, a very important part from a visual perspective to the property owner to keep looking nice, right?
It's not going to be like a swampland, I guess.
Right.
Well, I will say, I did go look at the neon pig one because they had told us in a work session that it would be like, and it really was very attractive, and it was dry, and we've just had lots of rain, and I ran over there yesterday and looked. But now I've got the filtration issue on my mind, thinking of that pristine water in this newly done lake. So that's, anyway, I'm sorry.
Any more comments from the public now? Yes. Come ahead, Fred.
I'm Fred Pitts, live 1418 Mitch Drive, and I'm a member of the American Legion. And I'm here basically speaking on their behalf as a member of that club. Two things. I've stood up here, I know what goes on, and I know these people work hard and they do a lot of pre-work, and they'll make the right decision. But it seems like tonight we're hearing a lot of concerns. We're hearing that some neighbors have not been notified properly, so we don't know how many people who have other comments that we haven't heard from. So, and from the American Legion standpoint, we're talking about easement. I like to say 500 feet from the lake to the property that Patel is developing to maintain the aesthetics of the lake from the people who live across the street as far as, and also as the Legion. So I just would like to ask the committee to consider tonight to hold off on approving this until some of these things can be answered. And I realize Mr. Patel can't spend a lot of money on plans and developing until this rezoning is approved. I understand that. But just a lot of concerns here tonight that if I was sitting there, I would be concerned about giving the go-ahead now unless I can tie that to a lot of answers to a lot of questions we've had tonight. So I'd just like you to consider not making this judgment tonight. Let's get more and more information about it, make sure all the neighbors are notified properly, and then come back and review this again in the very near future. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? You have some time. I was just going to close the public portion of this hearing if no one else wants to come forward and speak. All right, no one else. All right, we closing this. Pat, you want to give perspective on what the department has on this? I think what I'm hearing, though, is the biggest concern of most of you is the fact that it's a two-story building. And that two-story building, as an engineer, that it looks like that two-story building ought to be on the front and towards the lower area of that. And then if it was surrounded by the duplexes on both the west, north, and south, then that would mostly eliminate a lot of the concerns that the neighbors have. And as a planning committee, we hear it, but we also have some time to put some input in there too. Pat, do you?
Well, I would like to make a point or two about the zoning district that this is located in. It's called mixed-use residential. It's not zoning for multifamily. That would be inaccurate. But it is zoned for a mix of uses. We created that zoning district so that it would be a transition between the type of commercial activity that's on the main thoroughfares like Gloucester Street and the residential areas that are further away from those thoroughfares. But you always have property that's going to be at that boundary between what's obviously commercial and what's obviously residential. In some way or another, there has to be a middle ground for developing that property in between, because it's not going to just be vacant property forever. So that's the rationale for this zoning district. The way this site is laid out, you have a transition even within the proposed site, such that the more commercial part of it is closer to Gloucester. The more residential is closer to the areas that are residentially developed. You see the area with the duplexes, it is closer to the Dunbarton Hills area, the Sheridan Hills area. Now, the north side, you do have a area that's going to be a significant buffer up there. That's just, general observations about how the site concept fits into the zoning concept.
But on the north side is where the lowest part of the property is too, so.
Yeah. I think what we've heard are several specific questions that some additional information would probably go a long way toward clarifying the decision. I know that a detailed engineering study would not be something you could just do on the spur of the moment, but some additional information about how that detention basin would work. The second would be the actual distances from these structures to the other houses around it. There's not a clear idea of the distance that's represented here. I think it's more than what people might have assumed. And then, now I'm drawing a blank on the water quality. Yes, that would be the third item. We would like to know a little bit more about that.
Yeah. I would like for us to think about, kind of, now that I've got the quality thing on, the American Legion suggested 2 studies that might be done, and this is a wetland area, and would it be possible to do those prior rather than post? It's too late post, but to avoid any problems down the road, to Mr. Neely's point, to avoid any problems down the road. Mr. Faulkner, is it feasible to put this on hold and ask for those studies?
A detailed environmental study is going to be quite lengthy, though, if you do an environmental study. It's not something you do on a spur of a moment. So, and there has to be a real reason for that, where it's shown that there is a great impact on the environment too. And that city, of course, the planning services would have to decide on that too, Pat.
I think we would want to consult on that with the Natural Resource Conservation Service,
yes, just
who's responsible for the flood control structure.
Are we doing am I out of line? Are we doing our committee discussion now?
Yes, that's what it is. I was just going to say, is there more questions from the committee? That's what it is, yeah.
Okay. I would like to hear again from the American Legion on what studies you would suggest so that we can have an idea.
Well, one, it should be...
If you'll come to the mic, please. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Marilyn fusses at me as I don't get close enough to the mic, so.
Sure.
Yeah.
First off, it's really in conjunction with the Town Creek Water Management Association. Since they built the dam, they built the spillway, and they factored in all the flow rates and the volume of the flow rates into the lake. They need to be consulted, and in conjunction with them, we would request some kind of flood control or flood or water surface management survey to see how much of that volume, because you're talking about taking out that little pond or little lake that's there, you're talking about filling it in, right?
In the middle there.
That's right, there's a little lake, an old lake.
About the size of that previous yellow thing is.
That's right, it is quite significant, but so the hydrology and all that's going to change significantly, and the real entity who's not here tonight, and I don't know if they were informed, is the Town Creek Water Management Association. They have a major stake. You know, quite a lot of money was spent in building that levee, building that spillway that looked like something out of Soviet Russia. And so that should be taken into account, and they need to be, they're a key stakeholder in that. And so the neighborhood across McCullough is in peril if whatever that jeopardizes the stability and structure of that levee. That's the first one. The second one is the environmental impact. As everybody said, when you change from organic runoff to commercial/industrial runoff, it's going to change the nature of the lake unless you put some kind of significant filtration system that which will be right outside their back door, because that little draw where it all flow is right outside their door. So if you've got pumps and everything going by the Warrens, that's going to be going, and they'll be seeing that right outside their back window. So some kind of environmental impact study. I think the Mississippi Department of Environmental Quality has a big stake in this. Unlike a lot of places, it doesn't flush like Town Creek. This lake is pretty, for the most part, stagnant, and the turnover of the water takes quite some time. So that will have a more exponentially negative impact if the wrong type of water gets into that lake. And it's about 23 acres, so it's a good size in the middle of the city. There's nothing else like it really probably within the boundaries. It's much bigger than Ballard Park, it's much bigger than Veterans Park, it's much bigger, but it's also utilized by the entire community. So those two studies we'd like to.
I think that's an important point to say for whatever, because this will be on tape, that it is a lake it's not just for the homeowners. It is.
That's correct.
It's a community, like anyone can come there. It's not a privately owned homeowner.
That's correct, and we encourage it every day. People come out there, like I said, hundreds of people fishing it every year that aren't members of the Legion, and we encourage that. It's part of one of our fundraisers is selling day passes or yearly passes. And so, but, we've worked very hard, as Mr. Hill said, after the tornado, to return the grounds. We're in the process right now of working with U.S. Department of Agriculture and their forestry department. Met with them last week and walked the grounds to prep and reforest with hardwoods all the area that was damaged by the tornado due to our north, which actually borders their property. And so we're very, very concerned. Like I said, we're the caretaker of the lake, not just the owner. So.
I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Thank you.
Let me ask a question. Keep it for you, please. With what you just said and the engineer, is it possible that you all could come up, generate a map with the facility we're talking about, sitting on that with all the topography, with the dry lake bed and where everything is going to be? That would give the general public who is here an idea of where things are going to be, and maybe they could come to a better understanding of what is going to take place.
I think that would be a part of the actual study, because you're not talking about developing the land as is. You're significantly changing the topography if you fill in that little wetland, that pond. That's a lot of dirt going in there, so that's all going to be channeled right to the Warrens, back door. So we have concerns, and that's why qualified people should do the studies, but if it's undertaken by Mr. Patel, we would like the opportunity to be able to review and actually have an outside source give a second opinion.
To verify. Okay.
To verify, that's correct.
Well, Pat, how do we proceed?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. Well, been a lot of concerns, and if the committee has some more questions.
I do have one question. The Warrens said they weren't notified. I noticed that their letter went to Rudy Dossett.
Yeah, I was going to say that the Dossetts were on the
list.
And Fay Land was still on there, and Fay doesn't live in the house right before you go into your stew.
We have been there a year and a half.
Yeah, I know.
The tax rolls are not
It
up to
takes a
date.
while for it to roll over.
But I will say, I got phone calls saying, as far as I know, and I'm trying to see if there's anybody in here, I know the Huttos left, so I may be saying this wrong, that the people on North Lake did not get a letter. I know the Huttos didn't get a letter, and then I don't know who else.
Reed, Scott.
Scott didn't get one?
You didn't get a letter?
No, I listened.
Okay, okay. So anyone else, or do y'all know of anyone? I think the neighborhood association, to my understanding, did try to ferret that out to see, once they became aware of two people that didn't get a letter. And I think they didn't, and I did look over the list that we have, and I didn't see any of them. I didn't see Judy Pryor or Dick Guyton or...
On a Judy's move, she's not there.
Right, but because the tax rolls are so behind, it would have shown her name, I believe.
This is how that's done. We're required by our code to use the tax roll. We don't have another source of addresses. And what we do is the GIS program will generate this map showing properties that are within 500 feet of the boundary of the property where the application is proposed. And that red line, it shows that 500-foot limit. So you see it doesn't go very far over on the west side of the lake. Now, that doesn't mean that nobody else has an interest or nobody else can be notified. This is just the required minimum. If other people
And the letter was clear about that.
are
right,
interested,
others,
they're certainly free to take part in the discussion. This is just...
Well, that is really interesting because the people that it is going to directly affect were a teeny smidgen outside of that red line. So, okay, well, but they know about it now.
I do have a copy here of what was sent out.
Yeah, we have one. They all have
It's
one.
mainly commercial business.
But it's true that, Sharon Hills, none of that's all out of that area too, and they have some effect there too. And so that, but that is, the requirement is the 500 foot from the property line and to use the tax rolls. And as I say, a lot of those have changed, owners have changed in that time frame, and we just don't have them.
Well, my point in bringing it up is how do we notify these people? How do
We're
we?
at 1903 Lakeshore Drive, and we did not receive a letter. And we
Are you within the red circle?
Yes, my lady. Thank you.
Yeah.
1903
Lakeshore Drive?
Lakeshore's not on here.
Lakeshire.
Lakeshire.
No,
Lakeshore.
Lakeshore. Our property goes as the intersection of Lakeshore Drive and Sunnyside.
1900 Lakeshore Drive.
1903.
I see it on the map. Can you look a little bit north of Sunnyside?
My property is right there. Half of it's in your circle and half of
Yeah, I
it's...
see it.
Okay.
Yeah, I see it.
Well, I see where the church got notified and Jimmy Pappas got notified, but the point is, how do we address this? Because that seems to be a really problem.
It does. What is all of this is going to be a crazy question, what is all the other yellow?
That's the parcels that are touched by that 500-foot buffer. And the 1903 Lakeshore Drive, that notice went to Martin K. Jones.
Yeah. Different.
Did he own the property before you or something?
He did.
Okay, that's another one of those, yeah. Okay.
We just don't want you to think that we did this deliberately.
If the property, okay, so these yellow over here, like North Lake, they don't actually touch.
Yes, if they're shown
What
in
is the purpose
yellow,
of that yellow?
if they're shown in yellow, that means the boundary touched that parcel, so that they shouldn't get a notice. If
The
they,
boundary,
Touched the parcel.
that
See
red,
where the red
if that
is?
red boundary touches the parcel, that,
That means they'll get a notice.
yes.
okay, but see, okay, so then what is this?
It's within.
Or that, I mean, what's the?
It was within the
That's the
boundary.
property boundaries of the ones that touched. So, figure it out.
That's all one track right there, that's why.
Yeah, that's Legion Lake.
And then that's one track.
Legion.
And then on up there is the other lake, okay. Got it.
But most of it, I guess what concerns me is the fact that people have been living in these houses, and I know the tax roll should be up to date, more like that, Pat. They should have that, because they paid the taxes, or they wouldn't be there, or on it too, so, I don't know.
It's not unusual for there to be a year and a half lag between the time a property changes hands and the time that we get it.
Well, maybe part of a fix, because I know I guess y'all can't speed up the people that work in the tax office.
You know,
Or maybe
regardless of
maybe if we
who,
took our meeting over there, I don't know. But at least on this letter, because I love the way the letter that goes out, that standard letter that says, essentially invite your friends. Tell others we're sending you this, but tell others that are in your area. Maybe put that in dark bold or red and say,
whether you
think
got a
about
letter
the
or
tax
not,
rolls
though,
or
Margaret,
something.
people have the same concerns.
Right.
And we can get 200 residents in here, and the issues are still the same. So I think that there are a lot of things that have to be addressed at this point. I think you've raised some great questions, and we certainly appreciate that. I think, Mr. Patel, you have some information your group needs to get back to this committee. And before we can make a decision on that, I would suggest, as Mr. Pitts did, that we detour this from tonight's decision and get a little bit better information.
Ms. Maul, do I hear a motion that we table this then?
Is it better to table it, or?
Well, I would say,
that's what I was asking
Do we
Pat
need to
earlier.
specifically ask for what we're tabling it for, whatever the environment?
Well, if we
Yeah,
don't,
I think
if we don't table it, then we have to make a decision on it, right, Pat?
Can we
Okay.
table it until we have environmental issue questions answered? Is that appropriate?
We can table it till the next meeting, and then
I would
that
agree
gives-
with that.
Yeah.
I think we really need input on the watershed. To me, the watershed issues are much more important than anything else at this point.
Do you make that a motion then?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Maul, Ted Maul has moved that we table this to our July meeting. Do I hear a second?
Oh, I'll second it.
All right, Patty
No problem.
Thompson has seconded it. All right, it's been moved and seconded. Discussion on this table. All in favor of tabling this until the next meeting, which will be July? Raise your hand. Right in. Motion carried. So that means, Mr. Patel, you've got a month to do some preliminary on it, and I really would like for you to there was a lot of comments about that two-story building being close to residential, whether that two-story building could be on the front where the retail is and where you could have those duplexes all the way around. That way there would be no two-story building that would be close to residentials, other than it would be mainly on the front part of it. So, but anyway, we'll have a chance to, and we'd like to ask each of you that are here, if you know any of your neighbors, anything, to be sure and have them come next month. Let's see, the meeting will be, I don't have a calendar, there's a calendar.
Where's my phone?
Do we have anything else on the?
Let's see, next, the first Monday of July will be the 3rd.
So which won't be, July 4th is on Tuesday.
July 10th?
July the 3rd probably would not be a good night for the meeting, because that makes a great space there for a 4-day holiday, and there would be a lot of people might be out. So the 10th would be.
Here's July. If you want to
Yeah, I got it right here.
Okay, good. I'm sorry. I didn't-
July the 10th?
Yeah,
Is that agreeable?
that's agreeable.
All right. That gives you, each of you, you'll know when the meeting is then on that. Okay?
And when do you want to have the work? You want to have?
We'll decide that later.
All right.
All right, I guess that includes our business portion of this.